COVID-19 cases. The United States has now reached a total of more than 3 million COVID-19 cases as some states move to reimpose restrictions. The United Nations Children's Fund has warned that over 84,000 children are suffering from severe acute malnutrition in South Sudan. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Venezuela, where this Monday, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez reported 242 new COVID-19 cases, of which 202 were of local transmission and 30 were imported. She also reported 2 new COVID-19 fatalities.
We have 30 important cases, 26 from Colombia. The cases from Colombia are growing, 2 from Brazil, 1 from Ecuador, and 1 from Dominican Republic. At the end, there are 10 infected people out of contact with foreigners.
The prosecutor's office of Bolivia's de facto government has accused former President Evo Morales of terrorism and ordered his arrest. The Anti-Corruption Fiscal Commission based its decision on an alleged phone call between Morales and the coca growers' leader Faustino Yucra. In the conversation, the two leaders coordinated peaceful demonstrations against the coup that saw Jeanine Áñez seize power in the country. Prosecutors appointed by the de facto regime charged President Morales with the offences of terrorism and sponsoring terrorism. Meanwhile, the Bolivian people continue to denounce the widespread corruption of the de facto government. And in Brazil, President Jair Bolsonaro has vetoed the mandatory use of face masks despite the country's COVID-19 health crisis. President Bolsonaro noted that the veto on the mandatory use of face masks also extended to the prison system, which holds over 700,000 inmates, most of whom in overcrowded conditions. Bolsonaro also removed regulations that ordered establishments to report on the preventative measures taken to curb the spread of the virus. This move comes as Brazil reports over 1.6 million COVID-19 cases and a death toll of more than 65,000. And the first case of an indigenous COVID-19 death in the Javari Valley area of Brazil has been reported. The victim was an 83-year-old man who was a member of the Marubo community and had stayed in his village for 2 months. In this region of the Brazilian state of Amazonas, which has the highest number of isolated indigenous communities, there have been at least 100 novel coronavirus cases reported. Meanwhile, local communities have demanded urgent measures in border areas with Peru. Indigenous communities have previously stated that the lack of government policies as well as of hospitals and illegal mining activities have triggered the spread of the novel coronavirus in the Amazon region. The Nicaraguan government sent a message of solidarity to Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Monday following the floods in the southwest of that country, which caused over 50 deaths. The letter signed by President Daniel Ortega and Vice President Rosario Murillo highlights the solidarity that has always existed between the peoples of the two countries. They offered their sincere condolences to the tragedy in the southwestern region of Japan, where dozens of people have died and many homes and communities have been destroyed. The recent rainfall in Japan has been described as unprecedented, causing extensive flooding and landslides. Several departments of Guatemala have begun another week of limits on the circulation of private vehicles following the high COVID-19 infection rate. President Alejandro Giammattei announced the measure remained unchanged, along with the curfew. Despite the fact that the epidemic curve continues an upward trend and new daily cases exceed 1,000 since the beginning of this month, Guatemalan authorities have chosen not to resort to a total lockdown in order not to completely shut down the economy. According to the latest report from the Ministry of Public Health and Social Assistance, the Department of Guatemala concentrates almost 69% of those infected nationwide, with daily increases in the order of 700. In Honduras, the coordinator of the Nueva Corriente movement, Carlos Eduardo Reina, has denounced the government's incapacity and corruption amid the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Reina, who is the Nueva Corriente's presidential candidate, described the current situation in Honduras as serious after an increase in the number of coronavirus cases from 30 to nearly 20,000 in more than 100 days of lockdown. The political leader also criticized the handling of the health crisis by President Juan Orlando Hernández and the corruption that exists in the context of the crisis. He claimed that the government has not implemented the correct measures to curb the spread of the virus and the population lacks protective means. Reina also praised medical personnel who have given their best in the fight against the coronavirus, although the health sector has been deprived of resources for decades. In Chile, spokespeople for Mapuche spiritual leader Celestino Córdoba and Mapuche citizens protested this Monday to demand the government of Sebastián Piñera comply with laws that protect indigenous peoples. Marches were held in different cities of the Mapuche territory following demonstrations in recent days outside the Temuco prison, where spokespeople for Córdoba explained his health situation and that of other Mapuche leaders who've been on hunger strike for more than 60 days as a protest to demand the government respect their rights to indigenous lands.
Today, what we need is to keep protesting. We need to keep denouncing and demanding the return of our Machi Celestino Córdoba to his altar, to his territory with his community, with his family, to practice his role as an ancestral authority of our Mapuche nation.
We have to constantly follow the situation of our Mapuche brothers, particularly those who are on hunger strike, despite facing a pandemic at national level. A pandemic that was brought by tourists and those exploiters of our Mapuche people. I think it is necessary to be informed about what is happening and about the remilitarization that this government is conducting, which at its heart hits a troop of criminals. They are a troop of criminals. They are not Democrats.
During an interview with Telesur, Carlos Bedoya, a lawyer and journalist, stressed that the elimination of presidential immunity, which was recently passed by the Peruvian Congress, responds to clashes between the legislative and the executive branches.
For a moment, they became the previous Congress. The president went out and stressed that he would submit the immunity issue to a referendum, and they responded by saying, if our immunity is taken away, we will take away the president's too. During a congressional debate session yesterday afternoon, with which this congressional period of 2020 has come to an end, or this first legislative stage, and then, starting today, the other stage which has to continue reaffirming this decision.
This Monday marks the 113th anniversary of Frida Kahlo's birth, known as one of the most important Mexican and women artists of all time.
Frida Kahlo was an inspiration to other renewed painters of her time, such as Picasso or Duchamp. She was a feminist, a member of the Mexican Communist Party, and ahead of her time. Her artistic production was a powerful tool with which to exorcise the anguish of her hostile reality. Throughout painting, which she began to practice when she became unable to move due to an accident, Frida Kahlo would reflect the clash between her craving for happiness and the everlasting threat of its destruction, while conjuring up the unyielding duality between dreams and reality. Frida always said that the most powerful art in life is to make a healing talisman out of pain, a butterfly that is reborn in a combination full of colors and emotions. She always reflected her immense ability to turn pain into ideas, figures, and tales in her heart that transcend and are part of our universal culture. This Monday, El Dolores Olmedo Museum, which hosts the biggest collection of Frida's work, honored her and different activities and interesting facts, which the museum shared on its social networks. Ongoing events to mark the 113th anniversary of her birth will be held until Monday, July 13th, the date of Frida Kahlo's death in 1954.
And we're taking a very short break now, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In the Dominican Republic, the Central Electoral Board released the preliminary results of the general elections held on Sunday, with opposition candidate Luis Abinadar having secured more than 50% of the votes to be declared president. With more than 82.97% of the votes counted, the candidate for the Modern Revolutionary Party leads the race with 52.51% of the vote, followed by the candidate for the Dominican Liberation Party, Gonzalo Castillo, with 37.69% of the vote. Meanwhile, in third place is the representative of the People's Force Party, former President Leonel Fernandez, with 8.72%. Turnout was 45.63%. Haitian National Police broke up a fresh rally against citizen insecurity this Monday, organised by Ne Pas Dormir, or the We Will Not Sleep platform, in the capital. The organisation called for a sit-in in front of the Ministry of Justice to condemn the killings of hundreds of people this year. However, protesters were dispersed by security forces using tear gas. Demonstrators criticised officers and stressed that they used excessive force against a group of citizens demanding their rights. Haiti has faced social and political instability for over a year. The United States has now reported over 3 million coronavirus cases. The COVID-19 death toll has climbed to over 132,000. The majority of states have seen a surge in cases, led by Idaho, Montana and Florida. Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Jimenez said Monday that a new emergency order will shut down dining-in services at restaurants, as well as party venues, gyms and short-term rentals starting July 8th because of the spike in coronavirus cases there. In a speech over the weekend commemorating the July 4th holiday, President Donald Trump claimed that 99% of cases were totally harmless. He also played down the rise in new cases, tweeting that it was a result of increased testing. Regional authorities in Galicia, Spain, announced a lockdown in the coastal district of A Mariña, located on Spain's northern Atlantic coast, following a COVID-19 outbreak. The decision came a day after regional authorities in northeast Catalonia locked down an area with over 200,000 inhabitants. Both lockdowns only allow residents to leave the areas for work and other extenuating circumstances. The small-scale lockdowns come 2 weeks after Spain ended a national state of emergency that saw the government lock down the entire country and ban travel between provinces or certain areas for mid-March. Over 28,000 people have died due to COVID-19 in Spain, where more than 297,000 cases have been reported.
We don't respect the rules, and these are the consequences.
We have 3 people who are hospitalized. All others are in their homes with mild symptoms. The average age of the people who have been infected is 35 years. Therefore, this is a cluster among young people, healthy people, and all of the people who are in nursing homes for the elderly in A Mariña. We have tested all of them, and all of them are free of the virus.
Hospitals in the Ukrainian region of Lviv have seen a huge surge in patients needing to be hospitalized as the country's COVID-19 infection rate has begun rising again following the lifting of a national lockdown. Psychos Hospital, in one of the worst affected regions of Ukraine, is still treating ordinary emergency patients, but for the first time since the pandemic began, it is now also admitting suspected coronavirus cases. According to the head of the intensive care unit, the hospital began treating COVID-19 patients because the city needs more beds. In June, the World Health Organization listed Ukraine among 24 European countries that have seen resurgences of the virus. The country has confirmed almost 50,000 cases and over 1,200 deaths.
We have 50 places for patients with COVID-19. They are all occupied now. Over the weekend, patients were sent to our hospital because they knew that we are accepting everyone. Here, patients are in severe or medium conditions.
Irish Health Minister Stephen Donnelly announced that Ireland's COVID-19 contact tracing app will finally be launched on Tuesday after a lengthy delay.
One of the things that we're doing tomorrow is we're launching a COVID tracker app. This could be, and hopefully will be, a really powerful part of the toolkit in fighting this disease. It will allow us to get on with contact tracing in a matter of hours. It will allow people who have the app to completely control their own data. There will be no centralisation of data.
The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has addressed the situation in Ethiopia, noting that protests since the killing of singer and activist Hachalu Hundessa underscore long-simmering ethnic tensions in the Horn of Africa nation.
We note with concern that the protests following Hundessa's killing have increasingly taken on an ethnic undertone. We therefore call on everybody, including young people in particular, to stop carrying out ethnically motivated attacks and to stop incitement to violence, because these acts are only serving to exacerbate the underlying tensions. The shutting down of internet services is a particular concern, as it disproportionately restricts the enjoyment of the right to freedom of expression, including freedom to seek, receive and impart information, and risks further exacerbating tensions. We urge the authorities to restore internet access without further delay. The authorities have also announced that suspects in Hachalu Hundesa's murder have been arrested. It's essential there is a prompt, thorough, independent, impartial and transparent investigation into his death to ensure those responsible are held accountable.
The Turkish Foreign Minister called on the European Union this Monday not to criticise his country as diplomatic tensions continue to escalate with France, Greece and Cyprus over Turkish migration policy and its military and economic relations with Libya.
Don't criticize Turkey saying they are threatening us. They are not stopping migrants from traveling to Europe. Don't criticize. If so, Turkey will continue to implement its decision to not stop those who want to leave. Let's be very honest. This isn't a threat. It's not threatening language. Let's be sincere.
Is a key partner.
Turkey is a key partner. It's a candidate country. And the fact that we in Europe we discuss extensively and frequently about Turkey just reflects the importance that we attach to this relationship. And the advantages of a talk with the minister is that we can talk frankly, openly, in a constructive approach, because currently the situation is far from being ideal.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations Children's Fund has warned that over 84,000 children are suffering from severe acute malnutrition in South Sudan amid the COVID-19 pandemic. According to a UNICEF report, the organisation has carried out vitamin supplementation and vaccination campaigns, treating over 1.6 million children under the age of 5. UNICEF has also distributed around 102,000 mosquito nets to protect children and pregnant women from malaria. Meanwhile, over 230,000 people have been ensured access to a sufficient quantity of safe water for drinking, cooking and personal hygiene. And authorities in South Sudan have informed of the formation of a unified national security force made up of different warring parties that fought against each other during the South Sudanese civil war.
We, the army, disrespected our women and children. We didn't respect our wives. We never respected our children. We raped them. Is this a life? If somebody accepts the horrible and bad things he has done, then this is the right time to correct yourselves. But if you pretend and hide your head as an ostrich underground, then you still have a problem. I will go back and raise my report to the President of the Republic on the High Command that our forces in Alel are ready for graduation and ready to go to their places of responsibility as a unified force, the first batch.
That what we would like to see in a uniform, national, integrated army will commence without delay. So with those few words, let me say, UNMISS, as the Upper Nile Head of Field Office, we are a partner for peace. We've been a partner for peace yesterday, and we will remain a partner for peace for all of South Sudan.
Burundi's health minister visited a COVID-19 testing center in Bujumbura city on Monday.
With this campaign, we are working to provide access to a screen for those people who could not get tested in the past, and we feel that now is the time to work together on this problem. This is the wish of the government.
Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta held a meeting with opposition figures on Sunday as protests continue in the country. The meeting was attended by representatives of the opposition June 5th movement. President Keïta noted that all issues and reforms are open to discussion in order to stabilize the political situation in the country. Meanwhile, the opposition movement called for the appointment of a new prime minister with extensive powers to undertake reforms in the country. Health authorities in Kenya recorded 309 new COVID-19 cases on Sunday and almost 200 more this Monday, bringing the total number to over 8,000. Chief Administrative Secretary for Health, Dr. Rashid Aman, reported that the total number of samples tested in the country now stands at more than 189,000. Of the new cases reported on Sunday, 302 were Kenyans and 7 were foreigners. The city of Nairobi is home to 43% of total cases, followed by Mombasa with 12% and Newark with 6%. The total number of recoveries stands at more than 2,200. Authorities have reimposed COVID-19 restrictions in Madagascar as new COVID-19 cases continue to emerge. A lockdown was reimposed in the Analamanga region on Monday. The Secretary-General of the Ministry of Public Health noted that the government was forced to take measures to ensure the population respects social distancing rules. The lockdown measures will be in place for a period of 15 days, and only establishments producing food, materials and equipment to curb the COVID-19 pandemic will be authorised to open. Health authorities reported over 300 new COVID-19 cases on Monday, bringing the total to 3,250. The death toll stands at 33. This Monday, the Republic of Malawi celebrates 56 years of independence from British colonial rule. We take a look at the events leading up to this historic moment.
The southeastern African country, landlocked between the Lake Nyasa and Zambia, is known in the region as the warm heart of Africa due to the friendliness of its people. In 1944, the anti-colonial trends in the country created the Nyasaland African Congress to promote local interests to the British government. The former Nyasaland became in 1953 a British protectorate within the so-called Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, a move that was rejected by the nationalists of the NAC, alleging the federation was only retarding independence. In 1958, Hastings Bandan returned to the country, who was elected president of the NAC, and worked to mobilize nationalist sentiment before being jailed by colonial authorities in 1959. Banda was released 1 year later and continued to work for the total independence of the country until the federation was dissolved in 1963 and the new republic emerged. Today, the country is very well integrated in the region, in organization as the Southern African Development Community.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesoenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Teleso English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.